Welcome. I'm Amy Taylor-Kabbaz, and this is the Happy Mama Movement podcast, a podcast dedicated to bringing the groundbreaking insights of matrescence to the world through interviews with leading experts, mamas, and those who are dedicated to making sure mothers are supported differently. These are our stories and your stories. Thank you for being a part of the matrescence movement. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today, my guest is Amanda Jackson, a mama of three and the author of, if you're looking on YouTube at the video, I'm holding her beautiful new book out for you all to see, the author of Motherhood and Matrescence, The Truths We Were Never Told. I love that title, Amanda. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is such a pleasure to have a conversation with you about all these beautiful topics.
And I always think putting a book out into the world is very similar to giving birth. It's like this internal process of birthing something new that nobody sees on the outside for a very long time. And then suddenly it's here and you have to share it with the world. So, congratulations on birthing your book, baby. How does it feel?
Thank you. You're right. It is such a process. It was, probably 4 years um, in the process. And then getting it out into the world actually feels really vulnerable. There's this
Mm.
thing of like, okay, I want to share this and I want other mums to feel empowered and have understanding that I didn't have at times where I needed it. But then also when you share all those parts of yourself and your own learning, it feels really vulnerable at the same time. And thanks for
I really
acknowledging that
love the way,
actually.
yeah, it's so true. Yeah, writing a book is, everybody thinks, so many people want to write a book and they want to put it out there, but man, it is a process of deep reflection. It's like the best self therapy you can do, I think.
Absolutely. And there was times when I would write and then I would have to step away and come back at a different point in my cycle and finish off the almost the other side of it. This the
Oh,
gentle part of my cycle would feel like, okay, yep, I've said what I wanted to say. And then before my cycle started, I was like, I need to go back and say what I really think about this and honor, I guess, the nuance in so many aspects of our matrescence.
I love that you brought that up because one of the focuses I want
Yeah.
to talk to you about in this episode is honoring our bodies and kind of building a new connection with it through the experience of becoming a mother and matrescence. So the fact that
Mm.
you've already brought that up is just so perfect. But let's start first of all with your own experience of becoming a mother. You have three children. They're now 15, 12, and 7. So this was
Yeah.
a while ago.
Yeah.
And you're about the same stage of motherhood that I have been. And so 15 years ago, I assumed that there was very little preparation for this experience of becoming a mother and very little understanding of what matrescence was. So, what was your experience of becoming a mother like?
Yes. Well, I had no idea about matrescence when I first became a mum, none at all. I was working in a job I loved with a female mentor who was my boss and still friend at the time. And she actually said to me, how much time are you going to take off? And I was like, oh, 6 weeks, I'll be back at it, no drama. And then I had all these things I was going to do and wanted to do. And it's interesting actually when we talk about the masculine and feminine, how I've used your quote in my book, because she actually said to me right at the time, I can remember at my front door, she said, you're very much in your masculine at the moment. And I thought, what? What are you talking about? I'm so pregnant, like I can't be any more feminine. I didn't understand what this meant at all. But she was such a beautiful mentor that I remembered it and thought, okay, what does she mean? Um, and then when I became a mum, I went back to her and I said, I'm not ready at 6 weeks. I'm not ready to go back to work. I can't leave him. I don't. my body's not ready, my mind wasn't ready. And so we extended that time, and I was so surprised by how protective I felt of this tiny
Mm.
little baby. I was so surprised by how in awe, and how I just wanted everyone else to go away so that I could be with my baby. And the idea of visitors for me was repulsive. I was like, why? I don't understand. I just want to be with my baby. And I was so surprised by um, all of these things. And then similar with my second as well, I wanted to soak him up, but I was with two. I remember being starting to get really exhausted. Like, wow, there's no break, there's no nap space anymore. Um, and then with my third, I had I'd actually started my business, but in a different light. It was about parenting. And then with my third, it completely rocked my world. And I couldn't be this mum that I thought I was meant to be. Um, and we both, I then guess, didn't fit these molds of like the good child and the good mum. And I didn't feel like I resembled anything of myself anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a process.
There's so many things. It's such a process, isn't it? There's so many things you just said
Mm.
that I want to pull out here. First of all, what a blessing to have somebody stand on your doorstep, like you said, with that first baby and just plant that seed of you may want to be aware of the fact that you think that this is just going to be a walk in the park and you'll see me in 6 weeks. In Mama Rising training, we often talk to our potential new coaches about how much can we actually prepare women for the reality of matrescence, because so much of us, we go into this thinking, even if we heard all the stories, it doesn't sink in. And that's sort
Mm.
of exactly what you were describing. Like there was somebody on your doorstep explaining to you, you know what? You're very much in this masculine energy. And for those who are just listening to this as one of the first episodes, when we say masculine energy, we don't mean male energy. We mean a very masculine stereotype of energy in the sense of productive, success driven, busy, unable to rest, unable to slow down, focused on outcomes rather
Yes.
than the feeling side of it. So, what a blessing that would have been just to have that sort of tiny little seed planted. As we say to our Mama Rising
Absolutely.
coaches, all you can do is plant a seed at that stage, but it does
Yeah.
last even 15 years later.
Yes, so much so. She was amazing. I could not have asked for a better boss at the time. I could not have, and and actually, she's been a great role model. Then through all of this of how do I manage a team, things like that. What I guess accommodations did she make for me? How often she fed me, even just like when I was pregnant. All of those little. I know I was so lucky. All of those little things, and then watching her as a role model as well, working and juggling family and just learning through watching her. But yes, you're right, that
Mm.
seed was planted and going, what are you talking about? That's a whole different language that I don't understand yet. But then being able to come back to it and say, oh, okay, I see, and take that into the next, cycle of
Yes,
matrescence.
that's it.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that after your third child, you felt like you couldn't fit into the model anymore of what you thought your life would look like or what you thought your child would be like. Um,
Mm.
I think no matter what we're faced with as mothers when our babies come along, so often we are very tied to this expectation of what we think it's going to be like. And that is rocked in so many different ways. Maybe our child is unwell. Maybe we're not well after giving birth. Maybe we lose our job. Maybe our relationship falls apart. All these different versions happen as we sort
Yeah.
of crack open with this beautiful matrescence experience. When you look back at that, realization, I guess. Maybe it was a slow realization, maybe it was a big aha moment of, wow, I'm not going to be able to do this the way I thought I was going to. Can you remember what that felt like to be able to explain that to other mamas and how you processed that?
It took me a while to realize it to begin with. With his diagnosis came a whole extra invisible load. So, running to different kinds of therapy and then doing the therapy. And then, of course, with COVID, it meant that those support networks were, we might have had OT sessions where the OT was outside our front door or something, and we would, inside. And then, so doing all the therapy as well as trying to be a mum, I can remember a feeling of disconnection because I was focused on, well, what are those ticking those loads off? So again, into that masculine in a way, and also doing all the things where I thought I need to do all of these things to help him and to be a good mum because that's what he deserves. So it was very layered, and I think it was in the end like this straw that broke me. It was maybe years later, and saying, "Oh, we had to, I don't know, go to some function," and I was just, "No, I can't. I don't want to. I just wanted to." Be by myself. And I remember my husband saying to me, just come in half an hour. And I was, no, half an hour's not enough. Like there was just the tank was completely empty. And I think I had to get to completely empty to, and I guess, like we're talking about the seed completely coming undone. And it was very
Mm.
messy. And then going, okay, this isn't working. How do I do it differently? But it was that breaking and the questioning of how do I do it differently, where I was like, oh, this is where my agency and power is saying, I'm not going to use this model that's been, yes, exactly, like this good mother no more. And my sister-in-law said to me, oh, I've been waiting for this for a while, like the apron strings are burnt, and it was, um, yeah, it was a really liberating moment to say, how am I going to do this differently?
Oh, thank you for
Yeah.
saying it that way, that it is liberating, but hell, it's messy at the time. I've just recently recorded a podcast episode, a solo one just with me, a really vulnerable and at the time pretty scary episode to record, which I called Normalizing Breakdowns and Breakthroughs.
Mm.
Because,
Yeah.
I've had a number of them over the last nearly 18 years of motherhood. And even after sharing my story for more than 10 years and
Mm.
listening to mums around the world for over a decade as well, there is still this internal expectation we put on ourselves that, those messy moments, those breakdowns, those straws that break the camel's back are not okay. They're shameful. We shouldn't have got to that point. I don't know, Amanda, whether that's even possible now. I've been doing this for a while and I think, you know what? Sometimes it is the breakdown for the breakthrough. We do have to almost try and go so far into that masculine energy of doing everything for everyone and keeping that persona up and keeping that good mother expectation up. And then finally, when we let it go, it is liberating.
Yes.
But wow, it's painful and messy.
So messy. And I think that, the mess is part of it. And I find there's
It
really
is.
deep connection in mum sharing that really messy middle to say, oh, yeah, me too. And also just hearing other people's journeys and stories and then going, oh, that's how they got through. I guess it gives us that role modeling as well of, oh, okay, I don't have to completely break down to get the breakthrough. I've heard how this person did it. And yeah,
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah. I a few months ago I literally I'm a bit of a tattoo girl. I sort of get tattoos in bit of breakdown, breakthrough moments. Um, and I got a new one a few months ago at the top of my thigh that says it's a quote from Beyonce. And I feel like if I was allowed to, it's probably trademarked, but if I was allowed to, I'd call my next book something like this. And the wording is both bruised and beautiful.
Oh, I love
And
it.
I know it gives me goosebumps every time I say it because I think that's kind of, if you could sum up matrescence in the motherhood experience, we come out bruised, we come out changed, we are different, we have cracked open in ways that we never expected. But my
Mm.
God, that is the beautiful thing about this experience,
Yes,
right? Like,
exactly.
yeah,
Having the beauty. Sometimes I question, in my own head, I think, do we need to go through, similar to what you were trying, I think, touching on before, do we need to go through the breakdown completely though, or is it just because society's still stuck in these old ways of understanding mothers and mothering that we actually have to do that? I guess I question whether, I mean, we'd have our own evolution. I would rather women have their own evolution than break down to break through. I
I
think we're on our way,
totally.
but not there yet.
And I think, hopefully things like this podcast, your book, communities that we are a part of, the more we share our stories, the more we can catch it before it gets to that complete breakdown. And I also 100% agree with you that we shouldn't get to the breakdown point before we have
Mm,
that um, realization of what we really need to do. And that is not our fault. It's the system that we live in, the culture we live in. One of the things that I keep hearing you mention throughout our
mm.
conversations is, I feel like if I'm able to sort of point out something that I've noticed with you,
Oh,
is that
yeah.
even with your first, even with your first baby, that your body was kind of alerting you to your need for what I would call the feminine cave. Like when
Mm.
you had your new baby and people wanted to come over and visit, it was like, oh my God, no, thank you. And it's like throughout all this experience of the last 15 years, there's been this little voice. It's like the body's voice that has said, no, slow down, no visitors, don't go to that event, don't even try for half an hour. Like it's this whisper of the body or the feminine in us that says, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And it's almost that which is calling us to try and do this differently. But if we don't know how to listen to it or honor it, that's when we end up getting all the way to the breakdown. What are your thoughts on my little coaching reflection for you there?
I think you are spot on actually, because when you talk about the cave, even when I was pregnant with my first son, oh, if I could have birthed at home, I would have been so. That's how I imagined it. Who knows what the reality would have been like, but that would have been my dream to have that opportunity. Um, yes, that being, I guess, alone to really tune into my body. And even with my second, when I was in labor and they kept sending me home, and I'd go home and have contractions. And then, okay, you better come
Mm.
back in. I'd go to the hospital and they stop. And I think, it's really insightful. My body was obviously doing its own thing, but I wasn't tuned in enough. I had this expectation that um, I was a woman and I was becoming a mother, and that I and my body should just do these things. And so I can remember being really disappointed when I had to be induced over and over. I remember feeling almost a sense of failure. But I look back now and think, actually, my body was just trying to protect me when it didn't feel safe, or things like that. So. Um, I definitely think my body has been speaking. I just wasn't listening to her. Yeah,
Mm.
for a
It's one
long,
of the
long
things.
time.
Look, I hear you, sister. It's one of the things you speak really beautifully about in your book is, you have a chapter on self-care, which for everybody listening, I know self-care for mothers is, almost you roll your eyes sometimes because you're like, oh, yeah, I know I should have a bath and I should have a look. No, what you beautifully talk about in it is like real self-care, really honoring the way that you're changing your feelings, but also very much reclaiming, or perhaps for the very first time, getting to know your own body and listening to those emotions and feelings. Because so often our natural instinct, if we were able to hear it, is to go
Mhm.
slower, is to be quiet, is to do things really differently than we would have before we were mothers in that very masculine energy. But we don't even know what that looks like or sounds like because that's not how we've ever lived before.
Yeah, it's carving our own way and a whole new way. I think you're right. It is very different to how we've lived. And, for me, I always thought self care was a, quick pedicure or go get my hair done or something. But it felt like such a waste of time, to be honest, sitting in a chair for 3 hours. I was like, I've got so many things to do. Um, when I guess, looked at self care for me, and I know for many of the mums I work with, is actually really changing the expectations we have of ourselves, that others have of us, but then looking at, well, putting in place reliable support. So instead of just, being able to duck off, and the whole idea of being able to duck off doesn't really work for me either, because I feel like to be able to leave, quite often you're organising care, you're organising something for the kids, you're making sure everything's done, maybe the meal for the night's cooked, whatever it is. Self care, there's
Mhm.
extra load for it. Um, but I felt like self care changed when I was making it more about the systems, and where else could I, automate or things like that, and really stepping up and going, okay, what do I actually need? It's not to get to the bottom of my list. It's to tune in and say, when is my body telling me to stop? When am I getting snappy or angry at my kids, when it wasn't really about that the shoes were forgotten for the fourth time that week. It was about there was too much of a mental load or a domestic load, or the invisible loads were getting too heavy. So for me, self care really came when I started to play with them and move things around. But I couldn't have gotten there, I guess, if I wasn't listening to, where is it in my body that I'm feeling this?
Mm.
Yeah.
That's such a great reframe on self care because, yes, often it does require extra work from us to organize. Like you said,
Mm.
plan the meals, get the routine in, get the babysitter, do whatever you need to do. But at the core of it, you're starting by looking at the systems and support structures around you so that you can have this quality time with yourself. And what you do with that time doesn't really matter as long as it's sort of what you're needing and craving. But I love that you've acknowledged that often, and so often, this stops us as mamas, especially with little ones or with a lot going on or children that struggle with different things. You think about all the things you have to organize to be able to have that Saturday afternoon,
Yeah.
and it seems so insurmountable. It's like, oh well, I just won't do it then.
Yes,
And yet at the core of
absolutely.
that then, we're ignoring our needs again.
Mm.
So would we like the system to be different and all of that support and structures in place already? Hell yeah. And,
Yeah.
that's what we're both working towards. But
Yes.
in the meantime, being able to put that structure in place will allow that body, that nervous system, that feminine energy, that true self needs to be acknowledged.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the way you framed
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, and I find with a lot of mums, especially with really little ones, that that option to step away doesn't feel right yet, and I think that's really
Yeah.
important to honour as well, especially if they're still breastfeeding or something, like that. And it was only with my third that I found just a little crack in the system. Was there was a few au pairs around in our local area, and I would just once a week get an au pair to come to my house just for a couple of hours, and it was really affordable. I think she was $20 an hour or something, and she came into my house and just held my little one so I could do the things I needed to do or have a shower by myself, and it was just a little crack in the system that I could say, okay, this is for me, but I didn't have to push and pull away from my children when I wasn't ready to. I think that's really important to
Yes.
honour as well. Sometimes our kids just, they're not ready for that either, and we might not be.
No, exactly. And it causes too much anxiety and stress to walk away from the home in that time. So, how
Yeah.
can you create that space and support within what feels good for you right now? Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
One of the other things I loved about the way that you've framed your book and the work that you're doing is it feels really accessible for mums in that perhaps early stage, new beginning overwhelm. So often we want everybody to know what matrescence is and to implement these changes, to reflect on how their identity has changed, how their relationship may be different now, and what to do about that.
Mm.
Um, how to build a village around you so you're not so isolated. All of these core things we know new mamas need,
Yeah.
but like you just said, they're in the trenches. They
Yeah.
aren't even being able to have a shower right now. But what you've done here is like these beautiful little, I love the way it's even laid out. It's like just like a paragraph or two at the most on a page.
Yeah.
So when you open it, it's not like this, oh my God, I've got to read this whole book and I don't know how to approach it. It's just a really beautiful layout. And I
Mm.
think
Thank you.
through that, I can really feel that you're completely in the headspace and energy of the women that you want to see this. That this is
Yeah.
perhaps a first step, a little cracking open, hey, this is what nobody's told you before. Here's some things you can think about.
Mm. Yeah,
Was that
thank
the
you.
intention?
Well, it was interesting because the book actually started as two completely different resources. It started as a really in depth reflective journal, and it started as a series of 30 cards and quotes. And I took it to Sophie Brock, and Sophie said to me, "No, Mandy, this is too much and this is too little. It's a book, put it together." And I remember thinking, that's not what I want to hear. I don't want to do more work. Can't it just be ready? And then, but I had learnt to trust her reflections, and I thought, okay, here we go again. So sat down and just started the process again. And then it did take quite a few years. But I guess my intention was, as I moved through each stage, going from that early mothering stage and then, especially mothering teens, that's a whole different jungle where I feel like there's very little support, and mums feel like they're not deserving of support because they should have it, all figured out. And so I really
Mhm.
wanted this to be able to be picked up, although there's a bit at the beginning about birth and breastfeeding. I think those experiences still stay with us the whole way through.
Oh,
I really wanted mums of any age to be able to pick it up. And when I was doing some beta testing, I gave it to a whole different lot of women. And it was interesting as the mums who were becoming grandmas were like, oh, you've said what I wanted to say, but I was never allowed or couldn't articulate. And then
yeah.
even having two mums who are in their 70s doing this masterclass for mums that I'm running at the moment, that to hear them share and reflect on their stories and how it was still impacting them with adult children. It was just really beautiful to go across the generations and yeah,
Mm.
and learning from them as well. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, it's such an incredible honor to hear the reflections of the older women than us, the older generation, now that we now understand matrescence, isn't it? It just
Yes.
shows me whenever I've had that experience that, like you said, the experience of becoming a mother, whether it was 5 years ago or 50 years ago, when it's not acknowledged and not understood in this way, there's so much healing in diving into it and understanding it through this lens. It really doesn't matter where you are on that journey. There is such a gift of healing in this
Yes.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. The healing for ourselves and then sharing our stories is really healing for other mums as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to finish up, Amanda, when you think now about the experience of matrescence for yourself over the last
Mm.
15 years, and perhaps continuing on that theme of these little signs and little callings for you to honor yourself differently, to step away from the good mother, good child paradigm that we believed that we would all step into, and
Yeah.
to really do it your way, listening to your body and listening to your children and their particular various needs. What, when you think about the connection to yourself now, what have you learned and where are you now with how you view this experience in yourself in this
Mm.
process?
I guess I look at three questions usually I keep in my mind is, how's this impacting me? Like, how do I feel? And checking in with myself, really, like, actually, how do I feel, and naming those emotions. But then, how might my child be feeling, and asking them, and then looking at how is whatever I'm questioning or approaching impacting the relationship between us. And quite often it helps me then distinguish, am I responding to expectations? Am I responding to something,
Mm.
that's going to be beneficial to all of us? Or is this going to be something that will pull me away from my children? So I guess they're the three things I keep in mind. Um,
Mm.
but to the part of your question about, those little signs, how we were talking about the body before, I guess I've learned to see my body really differently, whereas I was looking at what is it doing? Have I hit all those benchmarks that I thought
Mm.
my body should, as a woman, do? And really tuning into, actually, does my body feel safe now? What is it trying to say to me? And stripping away those expectations that I have of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Does my body feel safe? And what does it need to feel safe? Does it
Mm.
need rest? Does it need to share and talk to somebody? Does it need food? I mean, how often as mums, when we're busy, we forget to even eat? Like, we're not
Yeah.
even so aware of what our body is telling us. And that's what this beautiful experience can bring us back to, is this connection to ourselves in a way that we would never have had
Yeah.
without the journey of matrescence.
I
Thank you
agree.
so much. Beautiful. Congratulations on this book, baby, and
Thank
all the
you.
work you do with mamas and grandmothers while raising your three children. And I really appreciate it. And I'll put all the details of how people can find your work in this new book in the show notes. And
Thank
it's an
you.
honor to
Thank you
be.
for making this so possible for us to all come on and, yeah, collaborate in this beautiful journey. Thank you.